We are halfway through the Madden simulation season, and it is actually flying by. Today I'm joined by Around the NFL's Chris Wessling and Mark Sessler, and I am Ricky Hollywood, and we're going to give you guys a mid-season report for where we stand. How are you guys doing?
Doing great.
Doing great. Loving this simulation.
Season it's been, yeah.
Crazy, right? Let's start with recapping the AFC, and I'll run through these quickly, and then you guys give me any of your, standouts or surprises. So in the AFC East, the Dolphins are 4-6, the Bills are 4-6, the Jets are 3-7, and ooh, the Patriots are 2-7.
Ouch.
Yeah, I know, right? In the AFC North, the Browns, Mark, are 7-2. Tied with the Ravens at 7-2, Steelers 4-5, and the Bengals 4-5. Interesting. In the AFC South, the Texans are 6-3, the Colts are 5-4, the Titans are also 5-4, and the Jaguars are 1-8. That stings. And lastly, in the AFC West, the Chiefs, to no one's surprise, are 7-2. Chargers are 5-4, Raiders are 4-5, and the Broncos are 2-7. Mark, let's start with you. Any kind of standouts or shockers there?
Well, I think we're seeing a trend that you want to be the team that if you got hyped up and everything went south, it seems to be that next year that you a little bit more under the radar. That happened to Cleveland. I mean, we saw that with the Niners a couple years ago too, really last season after being hyped up the summer before. Oh, Cleveland's playing up to the talent of its roster, and we're getting a better version of Baker Mayfield. Those offensive line additions have paid off. And I mean, they don't need to blow the league away stat-wise because they got a lot of mouths to feed. But in general, I mean, I would take them seriously next to the Ravens up to now. They knocked Baltimore off at least once.
Well, in the old days of fantasy football before the internet, we used to call those post-hype sleepers. Get them a year after they're hyped, and then That's a good draft pick. I think one thing we always say during the offseason is if you're predicting teams to have a debacle, to just absolutely fall down the stairs and go to the cellar, it's usually the quarterback problem. It's usually either the quarterback gets injured or the guy you're counting on just doesn't live up to expectations. And I look at the Patriots and Broncos and Jared Stidham and Drew Lock. Maybe their teams just place too much faith in them.
Yeah, I agree. And just looking at that AFC East, that whole division, I mean, without Brady and that sort of, very, very powerful Brady and Belichick Patriots presence, I mean, it is a wasteland over there.
Yeah, you'd have to look at the Bills as a bit of a disappointment too, because if you knew you were Buffalo and that Miami would have 4 wins at this point and the Jets and Patriots would have 5 combined, you think that the Bills would be, 9 or 10, and they've not been what we thought.
And what about the Steelers that you thought with Big Ben coming back, everyone was so hyped about it. They have such a great defense, and then they're 4-5.
Yeah, the offense may never be what it was in the heyday of Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. Big Ben's past his prime, and they've got a lot of young guys on offense where they need them to act like veterans, and they're just not ready to be consistent every week guys.
Yeah. How about your Colts, Wes? 5-4. That's like a decent start.
It's a little bit disappointing. I think most Colts fans would expect to be leading that division by this point. And the questions about Phillip Rivers, he's having an okay season, but he's not what he was in his prime.
Yeah. Okay, let's move over to the NFC. In the NFC East, the Cowboys are 5-4, the Giants are 5-5, the Eagles are 4-5, and the Redskins are 4-5. In the NFC West, the Cardinals are 5-4, Seahawks are 5-4, 49ers are 5-5, and the Rams are 4-5. That's a little bit interesting, so we'll get to that in a second. In the NFC South, the Bucks 8-2, the Falcons 6-3, the Saints 6-3, and the Panthers 4-6. And lastly, in the NFC North, the Packers are leading the division 6-3, the Lions 4-5, the Bears 4-6, and the Vikings 3-6. Now, there's a whole lot to unpack there. Wes, what jumps out to you as the biggest red flag?
Well, I think the Vikings are the most disappointing team in football. This is a team that was an annual Super Bowl contender for most of Mike Zimmer's time there, and to go to 3-6, they lost so much in the offseason, and we thought with a big draft, maybe they could reclaim that talent level, but they're just not getting it done.
Well, I think they miss Kevin Stefanski. Let's start right there. I mean, that seems to be the secret sauce. But, I mean, you mentioned it, Ricky, that that NFC West, I think part of it is these are good teams, and some of them sneak into the playoffs with a lesser than expected record. I wouldn't have a problem with them winning a game that extra than people thought, but they're kind of eating each other up in that division. And you see that a little bit with some of the stuff going on in the AFC North too. But the West, I mean, the one positive, if you're a Niners fan outside the record, is that Jimmy G lives. I mean, he's answered some of the critics. He's kept the turnovers down, and he kind of leads. He leads in a series of QB metrics at this point in the season. You know, I thought coming off a Super Bowl and an offseason were people a little down on Jimmy G.
Look at how loaded that NFC South is. They could be one of those rare divisions to get 3 playoff teams, and the Bucs they're the best team in football right now.
So exciting to watch. I mean, just watching that Brady Gronk connection is something to behold. I mean, are we in the future or is this the past? Like, I'm so confused about what is happening. Like, this is crazy. Let's talk about some rookie top performances. So Joe Burrow has 2,070 passing yards and 17 touchdowns. I mean, does that surprise anyone?
I was a believer coming out. This was a guy that the Bengals have needed, I think, for 3 decades. I mean, they just have not had that quarterback like him. I'm not surprised. That team, we said they had a lot of injuries last year, and they were a sleeping giant.
He came in with more weapons than a first overall quarterback pick usually does. I mean, they're usually put into a bad situation for a couple seasons. And you're right, Wes. I mean, the players that we needed to step up around him have. And, you know, Burrow, man, the one thing that we kind of did expect was that he would change the vibe of that Cincy fan base. And those Bengals games feel entirely different to me than in the yesteryear, that dark yesteryear.
Yeah, still got a long way to go, but they're putting the fight up there. How about with Tua with 7 interceptions?
Not surprising to see a rookie struggle like that. They do not have the talent level of the Bengals, so that does not surprise me. The offensive line is still so young. I think you just have to give Tua credit for beating out Fitzpatrick and keeping the job.
Yeah, I mean, he's thrown 14 touchdowns so far as well. So, you know, there is that good with the bad, and we saw that with Josh Allen when he first started out too. So I think it's like a pretty promising start. Now, this jumped out to me the most is the running back for the Rams, Cam Akers. He has 528 rushing yards, which is okay. But 7 touchdowns, like out of nowhere. I didn't personally see this happening. And so that really stuck out to me. How about you, Mark?
I mean, he's had some explosive plays. They've used him in the red zone a lot. I mean, he kind of came in a running back room that was like, someone step up here, and he's done that. And I think that Sean McVay had been talking him up all offseason. And I think in their passing game, you know, they're a little more tight end oriented than and that we saw some of that in 2019. But you've got young weapons around Jared Goff that the wide receiver position as a rookie doesn't always explode. And some of those new parts have kind of, it's been a necessity to lean on the ground game.
Definitely. Wes, any rookies that stood out to you or that you're disappointed or impressed by?
Well, I'm looking at the receiving yards list, and I see Jerry Jeudy's name is noticeably absent. That Broncos offense has got to be the most disappointing offense in football with what they added in the offseason, and guys like CeeDee Lamb, Denzel Mims, even Justin Jefferson outplaying Jerry Jeudy.
Mims has been good too. And I mean, our guy Dan Hansis, a Jets fan, you can't get him to stop talking about Denzel Mims. It's getting annoying. 5
touchdowns, 370 receiving yards. I mean, these are some really, really great starts for sure. I had one interesting observation, and I'm curious to see how you guys feel about sort of the season thus far. My kind of like hot take, if it was going to be printed in a magazine right now, would be the old men have something to prove. Aaron Rodgers, 28 touchdowns, well, 7 interceptions, but we can leave that out. So he's leading in passing touchdowns. Tom Brady, 27 touchdowns. Phillip Rivers, 23. I mean, these guys are coming out hot, and they're trying to prove all the media critics wrong. And I mean, I think the old men are trying to show something that they still got it.
We see this a lot in the NFL where the storylines flip from one season to the next. We thought we were at the vanguard of a new revolution with Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson and all these teams moving on from old quarterbacks. Brady had to find a new team. Rivers had to find a new team. Now they come up with a much better supporting cast. And we find out that 2019 struggles were about surrounding talent, not about the quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we got a couple of old men on this show right here saying we can still, you know, try to prove something on a weekly basis. I mean, for me, if you're another aging quarterback getting a little bit tired of where you are and maybe working with the coach you've been working with forever, the Brady scenario, Rivers, all of them kind of says like that late career, fresh start. And we saw with Brett Favre. I mean, it can do a lot, and it's totally paid off. I mean, again, you look at the Joe Burrow effect in Cincinnati. Brady just seems to be unlocked from a lot of stuff that we wouldn't have known about in the past in New England, and very free and loves working with Bruce Arians.
Definitely. Anything interesting stick out to you guys before we get out of here that you'd like to comment on?
Well, I saw Deebo Samuel as a guy who everybody believed in, but I wondered if he could live up to expectations because they were so high. Everybody's talking about finding their own Deebo Samuel. And here he is, only one player, Devontae Adams, who's having a great year in Green Bay. Only guy with more receiving yards. Deebo Samuel turned into a legitimate star.
Yeah, he did. I'd throw out like Christian McCaffrey. We heard a little bit that, maybe Matt Rule wanted to lean on him just a little bit less. Leads in rushing by a significant amount. And Saquon Barkley, number 2, I mean, he has been huge for the Giants, who are not a disaster right now.
Definitely. So we're streaming every single one of these games on the NFL Twitch account, sometimes with commentary, sometimes without. Make sure you go to the NFL's Twitch and the NFL's YouTube and keep up with us this way. It's been an exciting season, and I'm excited to see where it ends up. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.